you, it feels like music. It's happening again. I feel the BPM, I feel the music.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Record Watch, the best musical variety show on the internet. Before we go any further with the episode, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge something extremely exciting that happened since the last episode. Early in the year, Record Watch was nominated for the award of Best Podcast from the Intercollegiate Broadcast System, and as of February 20th, we've officially taken home that award. That's right, Record Watch might actually be the best musical variety show on the internet, or at least a pretty good one. All jokes aside, just want to thank everyone who's contributed to this show, either in front or behind the camera, as well as my fellow creators and the faculty at URGH Television Network for making this show a reality. I genuinely did not imagine this show getting recognized in this way in its first year, and I'm extremely grateful for everything y'all have done to make this possible. So, before I get emotional, I'll put this trophy back in our backdrop and get on with the show. We have quite the list of mainstream, well-recognized releases, but instead we're going to start with the sophomore album by Mandy, Indiana, URGH. So the beauty of having such a talented stack of writers is that outside of getting some interesting voices on camera, diversity of opinion and taste, and a good community, is it allows me to fuck off to the corners of indie scenes and hipster circles and give under-discussed artists 3 to 5 minutes of premium airtime. So insert Mandy, Indiana, an English-French hardcore band which I only found thanks to a Best New Music review from Pitchfork. You may be wondering why a distinctly European band, partially named after the ill-fated Midwestern US city Gary, Indiana. I do not have an answer to that question. They can join the same club as Boston Manor from Blackpool, England. Anyways, I went to their sophomore album, URGH, which is a little weird to say as a title, but I guess it's better than grunting loudly, with high, if somewhat unclear expectations. Immediately, I was met with harsh tones, intensely compressed speech, and a whole lot of French lyrics. Not exactly negative descriptors, I mean the French one is, but yeah, never mind. But even as someone who with a more tuned ear to said tones, I was thrown off with this hard, fearing that the project suffered from the percussion-dominant wall of sound style seen across hardcore that ultimately placed a dynamic flow and hooks to the wayside. Thankfully, it took us a listen to see the band's 2023 album, I Seen Away, to get more of the band's appeal, particularly the greater contrast with chillier electronic elements and that pulse-pounding intensity, with both elements done quite effectively and the dynamic blend come through well. The album is great, and while I still do miss some of the danceable moments of that debut, URGH makes up for that in sheer firepower, which after enough listens clicked and clicked hard. The percussion is immense, yet dexterously diverse, colorful, and well blended. The synth patches are dissonant, and often jump radically from track to track, but never feel disconnected from one another. I think a lot of credit has to be given to vocalist Valentine Caulfield, the most young adult protagonist name ever, who was able to flip from aggressively brash to stalkingly sinister, or swapping between French and English, and managing to keep some form of thematic cohesion. Also, major shout out to producers Scott Fair and Daniel Park, the latter of whom worked alongside noise staple Gila Band, for managing to make the banger seem full while maintaining depth and low-end heft in the mix. This isn't a wall of sound album like I feared, and it's better for it. But I would be remiss if I didn't highlight the lyrical content, an element where the band's punk edges really show through in the best possible ways, especially in how frankly actionable and upfront the band is, and a willingness to meet the desperate near futility of the modern social climate with some real firepower. I mean, the opening track literally cites a passage from the Book of Revelations, if that near-apocalyptic content wasn't evident by, well, the larger state of the world. But between the tasteful mentions of Gaza on It's Held So, the screed against capitalized healthcare on Sicko, thanks to a welcome surprise from future Billy Woods, and especially I'll Ask Her, probably the most blunt track in a rather populist album, with an utterly visceral call-out of men who would rather protect predators amongst their ranks and deflect blame on a woman than, actually take accountability for a change. In short, the album is powerful, rich in ideas, and utterly crushing. By no means is this something that I want to listen to consistently at the risk of fully polluting my ears, but when I'm in the mood for a cleanse, this does it remarkably well.
Coming up next, Nothing's Ever Gonna Happen to Me by Mitski. Put simply, this Mitski album captures the sound and feelings of one's sanity crumbling away. This whole album has a soft and mature feeling that slowly shifts into your subconscious as certain songs come to a close. This, alongside the addition of an off-putting album cover, makes me feel like I am losing my own mind in the middle of hearing this album. The album is very dynamic, as most tracks start with her soft vocals almost completely drowned out by the instrumentations, making me feel like I am almost outside of my body while listening. Then I'm suddenly back in my body by the album's end, and I will be honest here, I felt like crying over this album, even when there's nothing linking me to the sadness other than the journey itself. Anyways, I want to cover some of my highlights, such as Where's My Phone, which implanted the idea that I was actually going insane, Dead Woman for adding on to this feeling, but also keeping me grounded in reality, thanks to Mitski's beautiful singing, That White Cat differs from the rest of the album pacing-wise, but absolutely nails the album's themes. And finally, Lightning, which was a song that did have me in my feelings when I first listened to it. I really do think this album contains an odd sense of nostalgia and should be listened to by everyone.
Coming up next, the soundtrack album for Wuthering Heights by Charli XCX.
Wuthering Heights is Charli XCX's first major project since the release of Brat in 2024, which essentially revived her career.
Inspired by the gothic romance novel by Emily Bronte, the album Wuthering Heights does a wonderful job at capturing themes of obsession, longing, and emotional intensity, serving as the soundtrack for Emerald Fennell's film adaptation.
Charli's music is really able to embody this feeling, the idea of love that just lingers beyond loss and time. It mirrors the tragic on-screen relationship between Catherine Earnshaw and Heathcliff.
When I was first giving it a listen, I was initially worried that I wouldn't have been able to fully appreciate the album had I not fully seen the film. However, what I love about Wuthering Heights album is that it's capable of standing alone as its own isolated piece of work. Not to mention, if you haven't seen the film, it works at setting up scenes within the film's dramatic atmosphere.
The 12-track album definitely has some standouts that we'd like to highlight throughout the review. Here's some of our personal favorites.
First of all, let's talk about Chains of Love, a song that expresses feelings of inescapable attachment. It describes the feeling of love as one that can be so beautiful, but could potentially transform into something so destructive. Where even at the relationship's lowest, there's this unexpected expectation to keep things going strong. I find it to be a really reflective song. Many of us have been in a relationship at one point where if the ship is sinking, we may have felt this responsibility at the time to do everything we can to keep it afloat, even when we knew it would inevitably sink. Within the album, Chains of Love, it feels like the moment we see the narrative shift into something that can be described as emotionally suffocating. Now for Dying For You. It has a similar bumping catchiness found all over Charli's previous album, Brat, making it the track feel distinct from the rest of the project. The song captures the recollection of obsession for approval and the path it creates to toxic love. Yet, I think when you listen to it and hear those feelings being recounted, you as the listener become more self-aware, and so you're almost in a way motivated to do the complete opposite and putting it all the time and care into yourself.
It's hard not to talk about House, especially when it became a meme before the film even came out. It was released as the lead single, and as the album's opener, it certainly leaves an impression. The backing of a gritty, eerie violin with John Cale's spoken word poem sets an uncomforting tone right away, and Charli's vocals at the song's climax only adds to it. The song feeds into the gothic atmosphere of the film and hooks you into the album right away. Seeing Things, on the other hand, feels a little lighter with its simple orchestral backing. Charli's vocals feel very raw here, and I absolutely loved it, as I'm not the biggest fan of her usual use of auto-tune. But when the chorus of the song hits with the layering of the vocals and the piano in addition to the orchestra, it really brings the song to a different level. Between the composition and the lyricism, it's a really beautiful song. Yet it also breaks into Charli's electronic sound at the very end, bringing it back to that uncomfortable tone set in the beginning. Charli's lyricism throughout the album truly is able to capture the storyline of its screenplay inspiration. The merge of classic orchestral sounds and the modern electric pop is something I didn't think that would work as well as it did.
Her distinctive style allows the music to move across different emotional ranges, creating a sound that feels both cinematic and intimate. Wuthering Heights feels very cinematic, but hey, to me that means that she must have done something right.
Whether you listen to this album as a standalone or accompanying the film, I think it's needless to say that one of Charli XCX's biggest strengths within the industry is finding catchy ways to express complex and universal emotions in such a niche and unique way.
Up next from Harry Styles, Kiss All the Time, Disco Occasionally. Harry Styles' highly anticipated new album, Kiss All the Time, Disco Occasionally, released on March 6th. This marks Styles' fourth studio album, which is an electro-pop and features elements of disco, of course. The album feels like house music to me, but I'm not sure if it's entirely a good thing. I've been disappointed in how Styles' solo career has been going. He started off strong with his self-titled debut album, then the following album from 2019, Fine Line, but I don't think any of his new work has matched the talent presented in his previous work. The songs all feel really cohesive with each other, but nothing really sticks out to me. I did enjoy one of the tracks a lot, American Girls. I like the brighter instrumentation and the punchier beat. It definitely has more replay value for me compared to the other tracks. I think my major overall issue with the album is its replayability. Nothing really stands out to me or feels particularly special at all. The beats sound boring and repetitive throughout the entire album. I do think there's some good lyrical moments, and a lot of Styles' past work has showcased deep meanings through the lyrics, but when the song sounds so uninteresting, it just doesn't really do anything for the lyric writing. The best thing I could say about this album for myself is it would be really good music to put on in the background if you're not really listening. Almost in a way, I could see all of these songs being played at my old retail job. This album also just feels so easy with the repetitiveness, which I feel like when you haven't released any music in 4 years, you could have spent more time coming up with something more original and different. I don't want to dogpile on Styles' career, as I feel like he's done a very well job as a solo artist, and I believe he's capable of creating great things. This just wasn't really one of them. I think the thing people will remember most is how long and confusing of a title this album has. But at least the cover looks cool. I like Harry Styles and I like disco, just not together. Unfortunately, even if I want to hear house music, I might just opt for a One Direction album instead.
Up next, the newest album by Bruno Mars, The Romantic. Bruno Mars' newest hit album, The Romantic, offers a brand new entry into the world of Bruno Mars, shying away from the sounds of his other solo studio releases and diving headfirst into his Latin roots. This is the pop icon's fourth solo studio album, serving as the long-awaited follow-up to his 2016 24 Karat Magic. With a runtime of only 31 minutes across 9 tracks, you may think this project feels short or unfinished, but it actually plays like a curated experience where every second counts. Although not structured to top the massive commercial heights of his highly acclaimed solo works like Doo-Woops and Hooligans, this one feels like a true cult classic for Bruno Mars enthusiasts. Mars' vocals are put on a pedestal, beginning with the intro track Risk It All, a phenomenal 70s mariachi ballad frozen in time. It shares a similar raw emotional delivery to his throwback track Grenade, proving he hasn't lost that signature yearning in his voice. Still, some of the instrumentation features a strong similarity to his collaborative 2021 Platinum project, An Evening with Silk Sonic with Anderson .Paak, specifically the funk soul tracks God Was Showing Off and Why You Wanna Fight. They offer a smooth change of pace to his experimentation with Latin tunes such as Cha 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 and Something Serious. The ad campaign for this release prominently featured Bruno Mars in Latin-inspired attire, sporting a retro jacket and sombrero, which set a specific expectation for the project. However, this aesthetic functions more as a visual tribute to his culture rather than a total transformation of his studio sound. Despite the heavy marketing, only about 3 of the 9 songs truly lean into the new influences. The rest of the track list stays firmly in his bread and butter, retro soul ballads and vintage grooves that fans have come to love throughout his solo work. Regardless of whether it's a true Latin album, Bruno Mars has delivered another world-class performance and production for us all. And yes, his vocals have somehow gotten even better. His music feels more emotional and intimate than before, thanks to the change in studio techniques. Each track is mixed with a vocal-forward approach, intentionally placing his voice ahead of the instrumentation. With his vocals sounding more refined than ever, this technique highlights his range and makes the entire performance feel incredibly impressive. Even in his less commercially successful songs like Nothing Left and All My Soul, the overall production and mix provides a front-to-back listen with no skips. My favorite tracks from The Romantic would have to be Risk It All, I Just Might, Dance With Me, and Something Serious. I believe Bruno Mars has perfected the old school ballad, adding a true cinematic soundscape to the modern charts. I also think Something Serious is very underrated. It displays a fun, catchy, and almost hypnotic groove that I found surprising considering it only reached number 46 on the Hot 100. Dropping on February 27th, this album was planned perfectly. It was released right after a period of major popularity, following his 8-time platinum smash hit, Die With A Smile, with Lady Gaga. Combined with the lead single, I Just Might, serves as the perfect teaser. This album was destined for commercial success. It ultimately made history. For the first time in Mars' career, he's topped the Billboard 200, Artist 100, and Hot 100 simultaneously. It's clear that Bruno Mars remains on fire and continues to cement himself as one of the most influential artists of the 21st century.
Up next, a new album from Baby Keem, Casino. The man with 2 phones, Baby Keem, released Casino in February of this calendar year, following a 5-year gap following his debut studio album, The Melodic Blue. This album seems to be quite slept on for how rich it really is. Unlike other major hip-hop projects as of recent, Keem doesn't come back from a decade-long album hiatus like J. Cole. He doesn't attempt to redefine himself with a genre switch like Jack Harlow, and definitely not a combination of the two like A$AP Rocky. In fact, there's nothing really unique about the album, but that's the real brilliance of it. 11 tracks with an overall runtime of 37 minutes, this album is the bare-bone definition of a quick listen. essentially less than half of his debut. The album demonstrates some real emotional vulnerability, especially seen in the opening tracks as Keem discusses conflicts he's had to deal with earlier in his life in the care of his mother. It really painted a distinct picture as Keem discusses on the title track, where he expects to get screwed by his family later in life, with his mother using him for money and even his grandmother having screwed up his relationship with the bank. Throughout the album, there is none of Keem's trademark vocal modulation. Instead, the raw vocals highlight Keem's impressive voice and inflections. The best thing about this album is its open sincerity, with that being the best encapsulation by a bar on the opening track, No Security, where Keem says, "I can promise people this, I am not for everybody." The goal was to make some good music, and that is essentially what was achieved. Each track sounds different from the last, and Keem isn't trying to make some grand statement or prove anything. It's quite self-deprecating at times, with the song literally titled, "I Am Not a Lyricist." He also doesn't shy away from having Kendrick on the album, on multiple tracks no less. As the primary featured artist across the project, Kendrick scales himself back to fit in with the vibe, including providing a chorus with no elusive verse on House Money. It's hard to have a best song for this album, considering every song feels like it's in a different lane of its own, and all are executed well. That being said, the most reliable song and easiest to get into, regardless of genre, alongside my personal favorite, would be the 10th track, Dramatic Girl. The leading track in streams as of being a month deep into the release, however, is Good Flirts featuring Kendrick Lamar, which, while good, I just don't see it standing the test of time compared to other tracks on this album. As I said at the beginning, this album isn't attempting to be anything new or too grand or claim to be a new generation's cult classic, but damn is the execution done well. The only real disappointment is that there was only one mention of Keem's iconic two phones, something mentioned on 7 separate tracks on his last album. Heartbreak aside, however, I have to say this album is everything it needs to be, and it is definitely worth a listen to any hip-hop fan, and not to be overlooked for being amongst the other mogul releases at the start of this year.
Up next, the newest album by Gorillaz, The Mountain. The virtual band Gorillaz is back with their 9th studio album, The Mountain. This album draws much of its inspiration from classical Indian instrumentation, blending the unique Gorillaz sound with a more unexplored genre. The collaborators Damon Albarn and Jamie Hewlett both lost their fathers around the time of this album's creation, and you can definitely see the themes of grief, reincarnation, spiritualism, and death recurring throughout each track, as well as Gorillaz' standard political commentary. The opening track is mostly instrumental, but slowly crescendos into the repetition of the line, "The Mountain." This leads well into the next song, "The Moon Cave," which has catchy pop-focused sound and rapped verse by Black Thought and Dave Jolicoeur. "The Happy Dictator" was the first single released, and it's a commentary on misinformation, conformity, and false leaders, contrasted with an upbeat synth instrumentation. Personally, I think this is one of the weaker tracks in the album, but it is one of the more pop-centered songs, so it makes sense as a single. The tone immediately shifts with "The Hardest Thing," classical instrument-heavy, slow, meditative reflection on death and losing loved ones. This introduces a recurring line: "The hardest thing is to say goodbye to someone you love." This line is later repeated in the next track, "Orange County." This choice was a little confusing to me. I thought he repeated line and melancholic tone of "The Hardest Thing" made narrative sense, but Orange County takes that song and pairs it with a whistly 2012 kind of melody. It's not that catchy and also jarring. The manifesto is a clear highlight of the pop-focused side of the album. It is reminiscent of Gorillaz' older works, like Plastic Beach, with 3 main sections and transitions between them marked by repeated melodic lines. The 11th track, "Damascus," is a version of the Plastic Beach era outtake "Fresh Arrivals." There's speculation that this track is about the Syrian civil war, as Damascus is the capital of Syria, leaning on Gorillaz' reputation for political commentary. Moving back towards the more spiritual side of the album, the tracks "Casablanca" and "The Sweet Prince" both reflect on the nature of death. Casablanca sets up death as an abyss one falls into, while "Sweet Prince" cushions that message by reintroducing the theme of reincarnation. Essentially, the artist has found peace in the idea that death is only a stepping stone to another place. The final song, "The Sad God," is written from the perspective of, well, a sad God. They look out on humanity and realize that all the gifts we were given have been abused. It's a depressing note to end on. To me, it's the final message that wraps up many of the album's themes. Meaning, life is a gift because death is inevitable. so don't get caught up in the lies and falseness of day-to-day life. The album ends by repeating the melody of the first track, echoing the theme of reincarnation and rounding out the experience as a whole. Overall, I think this is a good album from Gorillaz. I admit that they will probably never reach the status of their Demon Days or Plastic Beach era, but it's nice to see them back with a clear concept album, with threads of recurring melodies and themes. As always, there are some amazing features and collaborations on this album, and there is a hand-drawn 2D animated music video combining 3 of the songs. I watched it, and it was a beautiful breath of fresh air from the AI slop we've been seeing.
Coming up next, How I Get by Leve. After the success of Leve's recent album, I wonder how she'd approach new music and if it could live up to this great album she released. Then I heard this song and realized that she isn't even close to being done yet. This song is so sad and emotional that it is only fueled by a very spare instruments to let her raw vocals take over. As the real groove kicks in, she starts to layer vocals on top of one another, creating a glass tower of beautiful sadness. I am obsessed with the chorus of this song, as it feels like she took the pop that was seen in her last album and left it there to branch back into jazz roots. This didn't feel like a step back into something comfortable like other artists. It felt like she took what she learned and wanted to show off, and she did that very successfully. Up next, this song was stolen by Pirates by Karma and the Killjoys. If there's a song that makes me say, don't judge it until you hear it, it's this song. A punk rock song that is also grounded in a shanty style, sounds like a complete mess of a song. But wow, this is awesome. I have a large appreciation for Karma and the Killjoys, as they have such amazing vocals, whether it's in the chorus, where the blending is immaculate, or in the bridge, where the amazingly powerful lead is accentuated by more beautiful backing vocals. This is a small group that I wish had more attention because they definitely deserve it, especially when this song shows them having so much fun. Up next, Devil You Know by Maya Hawke. For me, this song is a step in the wrong direction for Maya Hawke. Now Nolan, that's a strong way to start this, and to that I say yes, but as someone who has been a big fan of Maya Hawke, I feel as if this song should not be what she is doing. I love Maya Hawke songs because she has a great voice that creates an odd, almost dystopian listening experience. Meanwhile, this song uses a robotic voice filter for the chorus without any soulful guitar or greater instrumentation. I know that this song is supposed to be anti-robots and AI, but I feel like the message falls flat because of her reliance on electronic elements. I hope that this is just a one-off for her because I think she's an amazing artist, but I wasn't truly a fan of this.
And that's all we have for this latest episode of Record Watch. Bunch of releases. I know a lot of them are mainstream, so you'll have a bunch of opinions. If you have any comments, leave them down below. But otherwise, this has been Record Watch, and we're going off the air.
When I'm with you, it feels like